get started. My name is Maria. I use she, her pronouns. I'm an ag program specialist at the Franklin County NRCD, and I have been doing a lot of the work coordinating with flower farmers and seeing what technical and financial assistance you guys need.
Are you recording? Yes,
I did.
Somebody's recording.
Yes, it is recording. So welcome, and it's a pretty small group in this room, so feel free to ask questions. We've got some snacks, we've got some drinks. Feel free to sign in. And here we go.
Quick.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So for those in the room, this resources for flower farmers is available and printed. We've also got the 2026 Guide to Assistance for Agricultural Producers of Vermont. And this is a very comprehensive resource on all of the technical and financial assistance opportunities there are for a wide range of land stewards. But if you know of something that exists that's not in that book, please let us know. So with Franklin County NRCD, we can provide technical assistance to farmers and land stewards in both Franklin and Grand Isle counties. We can assist with grant applications, connect you to resources. But if you are a farmer or land steward and you're not in our region, we can direct you to your local NRCD. There are 14 conservation districts in Vermont, and no matter where you are, someone is there to help get you what you need. All right. And we are now going to pass it off to Lauren and Logan to give a presentation on what NRCS can offer. So I'm gonna stop sharing my camera.
You want your camera on?
No.
No, okay, never mind.
Okay, shit, we're already owled.
And anybody said you want just that?
No,
Okay.
I actually don't.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you though.
Sure.
We're getting there.
I'm supporting.
No, you're being very helpful.
Yes.
Hey. Waiting for the notifications to leave my screen. Yes. Sorry.
You're good.
No, you're
In
good.
my normal
You're
place.
doing
That's not
amazing.
where you oh no, then put that in your way.
Yeah, I'm gonna do it. Thank you, everyone, for bearing with that brief technical slowdown. There we go. Perfect. So I am Lauren Gibson. I am a soil conservationist in the St. Albans NRCS office, the Natural Resources Conservation Service. And
I'm Logan Reese. I also work in the St. Albans field office alongside Lauren as a conservation planner.
So we're going to talk about our two main programs that are popular for assistance with lots of different agricultural producers, flower farmers being one of them. The first one on the left is the Environmental Quality Incentives Program, which we call EQIP. And it's a resource concern-based program that if you have soil health concerns or water quality concerns, we can come in and solve those problems with either technical assistance or potentially financial assistance. And those contracts can be 1 to 10 years. It's a ranking process where we assess the applications, they get ranked and then selected for funding based on that ranking score. And the practices are individually paid out. So if you are selected for funding and have a contract, if you complete a practice, then we pay for that practice. On the other side of the screen, the Conservation Stewardship Program, which we call CSP, is a little bit different. It's a whole farm conservation plan. So all of your land that you operate goes into the potential contract, which is a 5-year contract. And there are annual incentive payments. And this program is designed to kind of reward people for already being really good stewards of the land. And then we have conservation practices that you do as part of the contract to go further above and beyond what you're already doing. So those are, and this is not a complete list by any means of the details of either program or all the programs that we have. It's just a snapshot.
Along that lines, this list that we have here is not an entire list of all NRCS conservation practices. What your operation is how we would fit the practices to the application and then your contract if awarded one. But some very common potential practices for flower farmers include high and low tunnels, mulching and cover crop to help the soil. Again, we have soil carbon amendment. That's either biochar or chicken compost or compost. Irrigation is another system that we can help with if you want to improve upon, especially water efficiency. And then we have quite a few pest management activities that we work with farmers. Flower farmers are not the only ones that face pests. We work with a lot of vegetable farmers as well with these practices. And then going even further with our energy efficiency practices to help improve cooling, heating, ventilation. We can get very detailed. Some of these do require having energy audits, but we only want to help you make your operation more efficient. We're just going to jump right into some photos because everybody loves that so much more. And we're helping to identify here, we're at the top, you see low tunnels for plant health and productivity, as well as pest management. So each of these practices is tied to a resource concern. In this case, pests that might affect your yield or the product that you're growing, and or to lengthen the growing season, help with soil moisture retention as well. The low tunnels can be anything from shade cloth to more like greenhouse style plastic. Also for plant productivity and health, there are high tunnels. With NRCS, we do require the Gothic peak style high tunnels. That's here in Vermont because we must deal with snow. But it is a great practice to support farmers to, again, increase the length of the growing season and pest management as well. And here's a quick photo of 2 different types of mulch that we can address both natural mulch, whether it's wood chips or straw, as well as the different types of synthetic mulch, depending on what you are growing. But again, it's for resource concerns of weed pressure, moisture, and building organic matter.
And this is our standard design for some micro irrigation, which is an engineered practice that we bring the engineer in to calculate water usage and pressure, and we need information about the water source and how long you need to use the water for, and with the goal of improving water use efficiency. So even if you are using sprinklers or watering cans or hose or anything, we call that irrigation because that's what you're doing. So we do have practices that are available potentially to make it more efficient. And then some of my favorite slides is focusing on habitat and especially for pollinators and beneficial insects. So these are a few pictures of what pollinator habitat might look like. On the top left is like a shrubby hedgerow next to a low tunnel. Down in the middle is more of a strip, like an insectary strip along a crop field, or even you could put it along a high tunnel or a low tunnel. And then on the right is an example of, it's a little close up, but it's a pollinator meadow over like a square footage area to provide a swath of nectar pollen resources. And we can do things like beetle banks as well for ground beetle habitat. And all of these serve lots of cool species that do really amazing things on your farm. So you see the monarch right there. Planting pollinator habitat is great for protecting species that are in decline, trying to keep them from being listed on the endangered species list and becoming more rare. And then I think what might be really beneficial to a lot of flower farmers directly to your operation is increasing the beneficial insects that are nearby, because they're excellent pest managers all on their own for free. So I gotta pull up my little cheat sheet here. Because it's just, it's too much to remember. So on the top left on the yellow flowers are thread-waisted wasps, and they, as adults, they pollinate, they eat nectar and pollen. But what they do is they predate on caterpillars. And so they will catch caterpillars and bring them to their larvae. They nest in the ground, they dig a hole, and they put their eggs down there. And when the larvae hatch, they hang out in the hole and the adults feed them caterpillars. And similarly, we're going to skip over to the right, the big orange and black guy right there. That's a golden digger wasp, and they do the same thing, but they focus on crickets, grasshoppers, things like that. So that's their prey of choice. Back over to the left on the purple flower is a syrphid fly, and those guys are also, as adults, they're pollinators. They are after the nectar, but their larvae will eat aphids and mites. So they're really good at pest management of those species. You can see the big spider in the middle, not my best photo ever, but it shows what we would all love to see is a dead Japanese beetle being predated upon. So they're just really great ways to control some of these pests. And at the top, last but not least, by far is it's a native ground beetle. I don't know the species, but these guys are incredible predators of almost anything, from slugs to cutworms to caterpillars, anything. And what's really cool is that, again, they lay their eggs in the ground, the larvae hatch, and they can live in their tunnel for 2 to 3 years. And they just sit there like ambush predators, and they come out and like anything goes over the hole, they're going to grab it. And it's so cool. But they need cover. They need to not have pesticides. They need places to live. So this habitat that you could potentially put on your farm can increase their natural presence and pest management activities while potentially decreasing the amount of inputs that you're having to put on your farm. So we definitely have lots of practices to help you with this as well. I wanted just for funsies. So this guy, I already talked about him. He's the golden digger wasp. There's actually 4 pollinators in this picture. I know it's not super large, but I am going to circle all of them. You got your European honeybee down here. We all know what they do. And there's a native bee flying up here. And they're mostly just great at pollinating. But the really cool thing is this little tiny guy. Oh, that little tiny guy. I didn't even know this was here when I took this picture. I was taking a picture of the golden digger wasp, and upon closer inspection, this is either a tiny little fairy bee or probably a small parasitoid wasp. There's so many species of these guys. And what they do is lay their eggs directly on things like tomato hornworms, other caterpillars, and they're great at controlling those populations. It's just a really cool ecological niche thing that they do. And all of these guys, actually, with the exception of the honeybee, they're solitary, they don't sting, they're not aggressive, they don't even care who you are. They're just so cool to have on your farm.
Yeah, alongside financial assistance that we were just talking about, different practices that we can address your resource concerns, we also do have technical assistance available. One example for flower farmers is this PXRF. It does use X-ray basically to scan for heavy metals, in a very simple way of putting it. But what is fantastic is that it gives you immediate on-site data. That's on that top photo, that is the scanner just forcing its little X-ray beams into that bag of soil right there. And then it produces a readout of heavy metal concentrations. And offering throughout this summer growing season, there will be various farmers markets throughout the state that NRCS sets up a booth and provides this free service. If anyone wants to bring in a sample of their soil, just come on down. You can, I know they're actively adding more farmers markets and dates. So it's an ongoing schedule, but visit our NRCS website and you can Google that. I'm sorry, search for farmers markets, soil health testing for the 2026 season. We're going to briefly cover some boring stuff here, but it is the best way if you're curious about getting started with us, is filling out an application. You can fill out an application at any time of the year. We do have funding cycles though. So depending on when you submit the application, you might have to wait for the next one because there's a deadline on that. But yeah, so we're always accepting applications, and this is, even if you're just interested in technical assistance, this is a great way to fill out, just to provide us the basic information about your operation and what you're interested in receiving assistance for. And we wanted to highlight this top. It does matter when you decide to come to us. Well, not immediately, but who you're going to apply as. Are you going to apply as an individual, or do you already have an entity or an organization established? Are you looking to create one and maybe you're not sure what direction to go? We do want to say that all of our financial assistance programs are taxable income. So that does, some people then decide to say, no, I want this on the business, or no, I want this as an individual. But address, location where assistance requested is also very important to us. Because this is, such as I said, taxable income, it is tied to the IRS. So we do want to know your address of where you receive mail, but then is that the same location as where your farm is? And that really helps us determine how we can help you moving forward. Moving down to number 2, that's an example of the programs that we offer. And again, this is not all of them. Still, there are more. But these are the basic 4 or 5 that people do apply through us. And there you can see the conservation stewardship and the EQIP programs listed there.
Yeah, and one more piece about this question number 1 right here is our sister agency, the Farm Service Agency, they are in the same building as us, but they're technically separate. They house all the administrative data, so you set records up with them, get a farm and track number. They handle most of the paperwork, which is kind of nice. So if you're in the process of doing that with them, that we can't really work with you until that part's set up. So that's why this is like question number 1. Have you done this step yet? It's sort of a precursor. Page 2. Or the bottom of the first page and the top of the second page. Again, kind of, it's a little bit duplicative, but it specifies in this box on the top here, the applicant legal name, like who you are as applying as, and whether or not you're an individual or an entity, and then your tax ID number. Because like Logan was saying, everything has to match exactly with what you submit to the IRS. So we just try to do our due diligence right up front to make sure there's no delayed payments or any issues or anything owed back to somebody. And then on the top of the second page, again, we have these different categories of historically underserved producers, such as limited resource farmer, beginning farmer, socially disadvantaged farmer, or veteran farmer. And there are definitions of these, which we can walk you through because it's not cut and dry. So we are always happy to help folks fill out applications if things are unclear, which we get totally.
But it goes smoother for everyone.
Yes, yeah. So any need for clarity or help, please don't feel bad asking. And then the last section here is just some information about your land, whether it's public or private, if you have a deed or a lease, and then whether or not you're certified organic or transitioning, so we can make sure that we tailor your conservation to what's applicable to your land and not present you with options that are just not going to work for you. And then, crop type and livestock, if you have them, again, just helps us figure out kind of the big picture of what's going on. Did you have a question?
Yeah, do you find that certified organic is even like a big thing for flower growers because it's not something that we're eating? I just don't know what it buys you in the.
Yeah, I would
Right.
say I personally don't work with that many of them, but no, I have not seen any. No,
Not for flower
I don't think
farmers
it's
organic,
really worth it.
but
Yeah.
this is trying to capture everyone
Yeah,
that might
it's,
submit an application.
Standard.
So from dairy farmers to veggie to producers to flower farmers and everything in between.
yeah, or even, if you had multiple enterprises on your farm, say you're doing flowers, but you're also doing sugar, and then your sugar woods is certified organic. If we need to do any sort of spraying for invasives or any kind of weed control, we just want to be mindful of what the limitations might be on the property. I keep trying to scroll down.
Nope, that's it. I know, so used to
I know.
scrolling it.
So one more piece that we want to show you is,
Okay, I was just saying, does anyone have any questions before we hop out?
oh yeah, we
And
could,
this, please feel free to contact us. This is our district conservationist, Sarah LaRose, could not be here today. But she's always available to receive phone or email. And you can always come by and see us in person. We love it. We're down in St. Albans, right downtown. And then, yeah.
yeah, so we can pop over to this page. So this link here at the bottom, which I can get Maria to send out to anybody if you guys are interested in reading. This is a quick little success story of a flower operation in Connecticut who worked with NRCS. We're not going to go through all the words. It's a lot to read. It's actually not that much to read, but the pictures show some really good energy improvement practices. These horizontal airflow fans, and this looks like it's mum production. Just helping to reduce the amount of energy use and while maintaining good ventilation and things to help production. So this is like, it's just a 2-pager, I believe. Yeah, like even things like thermal curtains and heating efficiency upgrades. We have lots of options for lots of different types of operations. So that's kind of it. Yeah, and we welcome conversation, questions. Just if you have specific things, we're here to talk through it.
Yeah, stop sharing.
All right, I believe next up we have Jenny Porter from the Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets.
Hello, everybody. Can you all hear me? Okay, I see a thumbs up. My name's Jenny Porter. I use she, her pronouns. I'm an agriculture resource navigator at the Agency of Agriculture. And I have some slides, so I'm gonna share my screen. All right, can I get a thumbs up if you can see oh, I'm at the beginning of my slides. There we go. Okay, so I'm here to talk about a couple different grant options that the Agency of Agriculture has that's applicable for flower farmers. These grants are part of our agricultural development division, where the division I work in. So our division is primarily concerned with business development. And so the first grant I want to talk about is the Working Lands Service Provider and Producer Association grant. Some folks may be aware that the Working Lands Enterprise Initiative also has a business enhancement grant that is grants directly to agricultural and forestry businesses, and that unfortunately flower farmers are not eligible to apply for because that program is so oversubscribed. The board has limited applications to food products, agricultural food products, which I know is a really big bummer for flower farmers and other types of farmers. So I'm sorry, I won't be talking about that grant, but the Working Lands Enterprise Initiative also has these Service Provider Producer Association grants that don't go directly towards individual businesses, but can support the flower farming industry in a broader sense. So producer associations or service providers seeking to specifically support flower farmers are eligible to apply for this grant. And so as the name implies, this grant is really designed to benefit individual working lands businesses, knowledge, skills, and invest in a lot of different businesses. We offer this grant annually each fall, and award amounts vary based on how long the work plan of the project is. So anywhere from $10,000 up to $100,000. And no match is required for this grant, which is a great thing. Producer associations can be industry trade groups, business associations, organizations founded by a group of businesses in a specific industry, and service providers are organizations that provide direct service support to farm and forestry businesses, such as Bill from NOFA, who will speak after me. The project types are pretty varied. So one of these groups could just needs to provide direct service to, like in this case, flower farming businesses. And it can be a real variety of things like market development, workforce development, succession planning. I mean, we leave it open to the organizations to tell us what the industry needs and what type of support they want. And then producer associations, in addition to any of those types of projects, can also use grant money to specifically develop and strengthen their association, either by improving leadership or organizational development, network building, membership development. So it can be used to kind of get a producer association off the ground or kind of reinvigorate maybe a stagnant one. So that's a more specific to producer associations than service providers. So this isn't a grant that any one farm would be applying for, but it is something to be aware of as a group of producers that might want to apply for one. The next grant I want to talk about is the Specialty Crop Block Grant, which I think Maria said Franklin is applying for. Flower farmers, great. So this program is USDA funded, that is administered by each individual state. So it's kind of pass-through funding. And the purpose of this grant program is to enhance competitiveness of specialty crops. And specialty crops are a long list of things that we grow in Vermont. fruits, vegetables, flowers, maple, honey, mushrooms, things like that. And we don't get a ton of money for this from USDA for this grant. So we don't have like a set min and max award amount, but historically we've not gone below $4,000 and we've not been above $58,000. And as a federal grant, this does require 50% match. This grant is technically open right now, but it closes in 3 days. So not very helpful to learn about for this round. But normally the timing has been a little bit off this fiscal year because it took a really long time for us to hear from the feds about how they wanted the program to run. Things are just moving slow on the federal level around this program. But normally we open this program in like December-ish, January. This year it opened late, but generally a winter timeline. And when I say designed to enhance the competitiveness of crops, that could mean anything from like marketing crops, assisting producers with research and development of like varieties or improving the growing production practices, expanding availability of crops in certain places, or just generally like addressing challenges that specialty crop producers are facing. And so I'm just talking about specialty crops as a group, but like each application can just focus in on one crop or a group of crops. So it doesn't have to address all specialty crops in each application. The key thing about eligibility for this grant is that every project has to benefit more than one specialty crop business. So any type of organization can apply. It could be an individual business or farm. It could be UVM Extension. It could be NOFA. Like any group can apply for this grant, but they have to do it on behalf of multiple specialty crop growers. So in the case of a farm applying directly for this grant, that happens sometimes. And an example of how that would look is like maybe they're researching like a new technique to growing a specific crop that then they would create resources to share with other growers and it would benefit them as well. Or maybe they'd put on workshops to teach them how to with that technique. So it couldn't just benefit that farm. They would have to demonstrate how it would benefit the industry as a whole. Yeah, so like research is one way, or like developing a new variety or something like that. And then we often see like nonprofits or like service provider organizations applying on behalf of certain industries because they have the ability to see. These are some examples of what products could look like. Developing new seed varieties, improving pest and disease control, expanding research and development, increasing consumption. And so like I've been talking a lot about production, but these projects can also take place on like the marketing and consumption side. So if there's a way to increase consumer purchasing of these crops or like how they're marketed to be competitive, those types of projects also apply. And then the third grant I want to talk about is the one that I manage. So I'm biased, but this is called the Trade Show Assistance Grant. And this grant is actually funded by the Working Lands Enterprise Initiative, but managed separately. And the point of it is to help agricultural and forestry businesses exhibit their products at trade shows that target out-of-state wholesale buyers. I don't know how applicable this is to the flower farming industry, but I wanted to include it in case somebody had a creative use of it. Like I don't know how often flower farmers are going to wholesale, like business to business trade shows, maybe selling seed varieties or something like that. But this grant basically just reimburses the costs associated with attending those trade shows. They're small grants, up to like $7,500. We increased the max this past year. It used to be $5,000. And and it opens every December. It's closed in January. The eligibility is pretty simple. It just the shows you want to attend have to be targeting wholesale out-of-state buyers, so they can't be direct to consumer shows. You can't have attended the show like more than 4 times, just because if you're doing that, then you're probably doing pretty well at it and don't need the help. You already need to have a couple wholesale accounts, so this can't be a business's like first foray into wholesale markets. And then products have to meet the Vermont local definition, which I think all flower products would. It just means that the ingredients have to be sourced from within the state. And if they cannot be sourced within the state, like coffee beans, then the product has to undergo significant transformation within Vermont and be headquartered in Vermont. And that's the end of that grant. So I also just wanted to plug the Vermont Ag Bulletin, which is our weekly email newsletter that I put together. And it includes any upcoming funding opportunities, as well as events, news, resources relevant to the agricultural community in Vermont. And while I know it's a little bit frustrating for flower farmers because not all of our grants apply, or like you're not eligible for all of our grants, new funding opportunities do come up randomly sometimes. Like sometimes USDA gives us money and like to people and we have to set up a grant. Sometimes the legislature will appropriate one-time funding for us to spend down. And so I just say, tell everybody to get on this list, get the emails, because if a new funding opportunity does become available that flower farmers are eligible for, like this is a great way to learn about it as soon as it comes out. And that's it. I can, Maria, do you want to do questions now or at the end?
We could do questions now if folks do have any questions for Jenny. And all right. If any questions come up, there will be time at the end as well. And with that, I can pass it off to Bill Kavanaugh at NOFA Vermont.
Awesome. Thank you, Maria. Hi, everybody. My name is Bill Kavanaugh. I use he, him pronouns. I am a farm business advisor with NOFA Vermont. I also have some slides, so let me share my screen. Hang on one second here. Cool. Can everybody see that? I got a thumbs up from somebody on camera. Sweet. Thank you. So, yeah, here to talk to you today about some of the business technical assistance that we offer. I am on our farm business development team alongside my colleagues Reed Miller, Mia Smith, and Megan Browning. We sort of make up the core of our sort of like business development team. We work with a lot of different farmers in a lot of different stages of business, types of production, all of that. So always happy to talk through some of the things that we offer because we have a lot of different programs and then a lot of sort of like non-programmatic type of support. So to give you a super quick overview, I'm sure most folks are at least a little bit familiar with NOFA, but just we always like to sort of give some grounding. You know, we're a member-driven organization. We promote organic practices to build a food system that's economically viable, ecologically sound, and socially just. And, you know, I know we've already talked about it. I know I'm talking to a room full of flower farmers. You know, certified organic doesn't always, you know, apply to the flower world, but you know, a lot of times folks are, you know, not exclusively flower farmers. They might have a vegetable operation, or even a livestock operation that is certified. So sometimes there's some overlap. And I also want to really highlight, and I'll probably mention this a couple times, you know, we certainly work with organic farmers, but we do not exclusively work with organic farmers. Our business development team really works across the spectrum of folks who are certified organic, who are thinking of being certified organic, or maybe who are never going to be certified organic. We're a bit agnostic on our team about that. So just calling that out. And then just to give a very quick overview of some programs, obviously there's our farmer services team. We also work in the food access realm, and we also do a lot of advocacy and policy, and just sort of like education and community building. So just calling out that we do a lot of work in a lot of areas. We have a whole team that's in the State House constantly talking about farmer issues. So, even if your day-to-day work isn't necessarily, organic practices, there's still a lot that NOFA is doing to advocate for farmers. And if you have thoughts or questions or need support in any of that realm, feel free to reach out to us. So, talking about some programs. So we kind of have a bit of a continuum of programs that we offer for farmers. The first and the sort of earliest, I guess, is our Farm Beginnings program. And, the name is a bit of a misnomer, or it trips people up sometimes. It's not just for very completely beginning farmers. It's for farmers who are sort of um, either thinking about launching or have just launched, or maybe are in the first couple of years of their farm business. It's kind of the whole early stage spectrum. We work through sort of all of the aspects of the business planning process. The idea is, it's a year-long program. We start in the fall. We have like sort of weekly modules. We meet every 2 weeks online. You work through some modules, and at the end of it, you have basically a full business plan ready to go. And it's really, really useful for farmers who are trying to maybe get their head around what their business plan is for their farm, or sometimes they're going to be going out for financing, or they're looking to acquire a piece of land and they really need to have a business plan and they need to approach it in a structured way. So this can be really helpful for getting that done. Each live session and module that we do is focused on a different aspect of the business plan, and myself and Megan Browning facilitate it, but the discussion and learning is really led by established farmers. So we have folks come in, they can talk about their journey on their farm, in whatever piece that's being talked about: land access, financial management, marketing, whatever it is. And we also bring in a lot of local technical service providers. So folks who you'll probably be working with throughout your farm career, marketing consultants, web consultants, stuff like that, folks who are really well versed in these different areas. So it's a really good way to kind of make connections with sort of your fellow farmers, and also make connections within the service provider realm in general. There's also a mentorship component to Farm Beginnings, which is really cool. We hook you up with an established farm who can, act as your mentor. They're there to sort of bounce ideas off of, get insight into how they've structured some elements of their business, ask questions on the production side, the business side, the, more emotional side, of farming. So that's a really key component, and it's something that folks have really benefited from. Moving down the list a little bit, we have our Journey Farmer program. This is for farmers who are sort of in the first few years of running their farm business. We kind of talk about it sometimes. We kind of conceived about it as being a program that's sort of the next step, almost like you graduate, you do Farm Beginnings, then you kind of graduate into Journey Farmer. It doesn't always work out like that. Sometimes folks come in and they've been in business for a long enough time and they never did Farm Beginnings, but they're a better fit for Journey Farmer, and that's sort of the direction they go in. So it's not like a totally binary kind of thing. What's different about Journey Farmer is that each cohort is kind of unique. We take in applications, we figure out who's going to be in the cohort, and then we sort of shape the program to the interests and goals of who's involved. So, if we talk with the farmers and everybody's like really wants to know more about soil health, well, then we're going to talk about soil health, or there's a lot of questions about marketing. Well, then we'll bring in some marketing consultants and we'll do a kind of a deep dive into marketing. So we try to make this, I don't want to say open-ended, but it's a little bit more of like a choose your own adventure kind of thing. And it's a really cool way to do some peer learning with other folks who are kind of in your cohort. Um, and then, yeah, this one is sort of a mix of in-person and virtual. And it always starts with the farm visit from the NOFA team. So we'll come out, we'll sort of talk through your farm, we'll offer up some ideas and some different, resources you can access. And then we'll start to build the cohort. So definitely something to check out if you're, a little bit further along, a little bit more established. It's a really cool option. We also have our farm viability program. So you're familiar with, or you've at least heard about farm viability. This is a business planning program. It's administered through VHCB, the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board. Um, we're not the only organization that does it. We certainly do a lot of farm viability work, but there are other partner orgs, which I'll mention kind of at the end here. But essentially, farm viability is a 2-year business planning program. It is one-on-one with a farm business advisor. Um, I would describe it as pretty intense. It, can be, it's usually about monthly meetings with some homework in between to um, really go deep on a business plan. I would say even deeper than what we do in Farm Beginnings. It's really great for farmers who are, established and maybe they're exploring, how to scale the business to the next step. They've been doing it a few years, things seem like they're going all right. How do we get to the next step? That's a great use of farm viability enrollment. Sometimes farmers are exploring financing. Either they're applying for a grant or they're going to a bank and they need to get a loan. They really want to have a solid business plan to rely on. We do a lot of that. Maybe they're looking at a transfer. They want to bring in the next generation. They want to sell the farm. Or sometimes, we do have farmers who come to us for farm viability who are facing financial issues, who are just they're in a cash flow crunch for whatever reason. The last couple of years with some of the crazy weather, the floods and stuff like that, we've had folks enroll in farm viability who are just like, the business was going great, and then we faced some real hardships not of our own making, and now what? How do we pivot? What are some options? So we can come in and help folks plan around that. So that's just some modalities of that. I mean, not everybody fits into each individual slot perfectly. So it's really for farmers at kind of any stage of the business. The only real eligibility requirement for farm viability is that you've been in business at least 2 years and you have at least $15,000 in revenue. So not a super high bar for most farmers. So we always encourage folks if it feels like the right time, get in touch. We can talk you through a little bit more what it would look like in your scenario. So, for more info about that, I mean, I'm always happy to talk through this stuff. You can reach out to me, but Kelly Hastings at VHCB administers that, so she's kind of your main point of contact. And then this is my everything else slide. Really just want to highlight that at NOFA, we are really available to support farmers in any way we can. We have a lot of different programs, a lot of different things that could potentially help. But my advice to everyone is like always just give us a call. Like if you have a question you want answered, or you don't really know, you feel like you want some support, with maybe a grant application, or you want to buy that piece of land that came up for sale next door, and don't bother trying to put yourself into a particular programmatic bucket. We'll figure out who's going to pay for the work, but call us and we can figure out what we can do to help. We do a lot of just sort of one-on-one coaching, sort of one-off, 1 or 2 meeting type of planning visits to talk to folks. We can talk about business, we can talk about land access. We can always talk about organic certification, especially again, maybe on the flower side, not as much, but if you got a veggie operation or something like that, we can do that. One of the things we do a lot of is we connect with farmers, with other farmers to help with specific production issues. So we're not everybody at NOFA. I don't say everybody, but most folks at NOFA have a farming background, or at least some level of farming background. But we're not the experts. Farmers are really the experts on production stuff, pest management and stuff like that. So our goal is always, if you've got a question about that stuff, come to us. We'll find someone with the answer. we can use some funds to help pay that sort of mentor farmer for their time, and you'll hopefully get the answers you need. So that's a really powerful tool on the production side. And yeah, sort of last but not least on that, we also have funding to help farmers with marketing. So we have some grant funds that we can use to help you with your marketing efforts. That can look like a lot of different stuff. A lot of folks use it for website development, logo development and design work. Some folks want to work with someone to develop like an email marketing campaign or build out a social media presence a little bit. You know, we've got funds to help pay for that. We don't really do that work in-house, but we have a lot of consultants that we work with who we can bring in and hook you up. So you know, there again, if you're trying to solve a marketing problem or you've got marketing um, goals that you want help reaching, you know, feel free to reach out to me. I can help, you know, facilitate that a little bit. We've got a decent chunk of money to help farmers with that stuff. Um, One last thing I will mention, just on the organic side, you know, again, not something that is you know, the end all be all for us, but we do have the TOP program, which is our organic transition support program. So if in any element of your farming you're considering transitioning to organic, we do have this program to hook you up with an established organic farm who can help you through some of the nuances of record keeping and, you know, what amendments you can use and can't use, and maybe how to better price your products to get the organic premium, things like that. So again, may not be something that is super applicable to this group, but just know that it's out there and we do have that support. And then yeah, just talking about some other partners, and these are, you know, especially when we talk about farm viability, these are some of the other business service provider organizations in the state. I'm definitely left some folks off, I'm sure, but you know, the big ones that we work with a lot: Intervale Center, Center for Ag Economy up in Hardwick, Land for Good, UVM Extension. They're all really awesome partners, and you know, we are all really close colleagues. So you know, I'm here today representing NOFA, but I'm definitely, you know, I'm well connected with these folks, and just sort of giving a plug again, like if you've got you know, really any questions at all about the business piece of your work, you know, you can reach out to me, and it may well be that it's a better fit for a program that the Intervale has, or, you know, I know Land for Good is like a really great resource for land access, and that's what you're looking for. So, you know, we are always making referrals back and forth to one another, and you know, we tend to be really in close collaboration with all these other partners. So, you know, again, don't ever hesitate to get in touch. Happy to just have a conversation with folks, just to see where we could possibly help meet their needs, or, you know, who else is out there to help out. So, do I have another slide? I don't. Thank you so much. That's my spiel. That's my contact info. Please, you know, like I said, just reach out. Don't hesitate to pick up the phone, shoot me an email. Always happy to talk and see what we can do to support everybody. So that's what I got.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Bill. Do we have any immediate questions for Bill about farm viability, any of the NOFA programs? Not. And and Bill talked about these, but there are multiple organizations who do business planning for farms. And these are all really great people. Highly recommend just getting in touch with folks at your local conservation district, folks at NOFA, folks at VHCB, and our job is to know what resources there are, and can help point you in the right direction. So what's next? I am submitting an application to the specialty crop grant program, that is due on Monday, but this will, provide funding for additional workshops, on-farm field days, technical assistance opportunities, and just like real spaces to network with fellow flower farmers. And my experience has been that there are so many people who know a lot, and it can be a little bit hard to know what's out there. If you are a flower farmer and want to be part of this work, please connect, and we can be in touch if we do receive funding for additional technical assistance for you. Okay, and then there will be a post-event survey sent to your email, and this can help to inform future workshops hosted by Franklin County NRCD. And here's some names and contact information, info for those who presented. And thank you all so much for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm sure more questions folks do have.
Oh,
Yes.
yes, please.
There-
Broad questions.
Yeah, feel free to ask questions, and for folks on Zoom, if you wanna raise your hand, then we can figure that out as well.
But there's really specific questions
Yeah.
too.
We
Yeah.
have experts here.
There's a hand.
So I thought last year that, I saw Sarah Rose's name up there, and I know that there was a grant for the high tunnels. But I thought that that grant had closed and ended last year. I think the deadline, if it wasn't last year, maybe it was the year before I'm thinking of. Is that still available?
So through NRCS,
Can you repeat the question? Just
yes. So there was a question about a high tunnel availability to apply for funding for a high tunnel, and through NRCS, we operate on the federal fiscal year, which starts October 1st, goes through September 30th. And every year we have sort of batching deadlines. So there's a funding cycle within every year, but the opportunities to apply for funding are ongoing. You can apply anytime throughout the year. It's just a matter of where you are in the timeline when we catch on to things. So this past year, we had an application deadline in August. There was another one in January of 26. And right now, at this stage of this fiscal year, we have one ranking deadline, which is coming up on April 10th. So if folks who have active applications with us, we rank those by April 10th. The state office then selects those applications that rise to the top, and then we move those towards contract. If your application was not selected for funding, it rolls over to the next opportunity. So even if you don't get selected, you can try again multiple times. Or if you missed the application deadline, you can sign up the day after and you'll just get caught up the next time it comes around. But we work with folks all year round throughout the whole, any season. We work on the conservation planning portion of things and dialing into like how your operation runs, what your goals are, and what alternatives we can present to you so you can kind of make the decisions for what works for your farm.
So there is still funding for high tunnel.
Definitely.
NRCS. Is there,
Yes.
is it, my sense is like, I feel like it was definitely like advertised as like a big priority at some point. Or like opportunity for Vermont farmers. It's
Yeah.
like you can get a high tunnel funded through
Right.
NRCS.
Is
that still like, is it still prioritized or has it never really changed? It's like priority.
I think on paper, it hasn't really.
It changed some because it did start out as an interim practice, so a practice that we were testing to see whether it fit Vermont. And there was a high reception of it, so they made it an official practice in Vermont, and I think then it got more publicity that way, but there was never ever more funding thrown at it. What does matter though is how our funding pools change every year. And so sometimes a high tunnel will rise higher because there is a priority, say, on soil health, or beginning farmers, or organic farmers, so that's certain practices then kind of give you more points and you do rise to the top.
Yeah, there's so much variability in how each project can come together and what's being addressed on a farm, and we really never from year to year have any idea what's likely to get funded and what's not. We just always encourage everyone, if you have the slightest inkling of wanting to do it, to just start, because there's no obligation to work with us. We do lots of technical assistance all the time, even if you don't get selected for funding. It's a learning opportunity for folks, and it's totally voluntary, and there's no obligation to complete anything unless you actually do sign into that contract. So please reach out, because it can be a lengthy process. So the earlier, the better, obviously.
And with NRCS, I know that some of these other programs had eligibility rules and like you have to have X amount of revenue.
Oh, yeah. No,
How
there
does it
is,
apply to NRCS?
it does not. There's no size requirements, revenue requirements.
Well, there's a revenue restriction.
There is. There is a USDA adjusted gross income restriction of $900,000 per year. In case that may be of consequence to anyone. But yeah, there's the very loose definitions of an agricultural producer, or it's really just working lands, because forest managers are also eligible for our programs, and flower farmers absolutely fall into that category. So it never hurts to seek us out and just run through some options and see how we can help you out.
So the funding has it remained the same as the prices rise for the high tunnel?
So every year we have flat rate payments for all of our practices. And this year, the way they calculate things did change quite a bit, because they've changed from just a single per square foot payment to now it's like a base payment. So any high tunnel is going to cost at least this much, regardless of how big it is. And this is just one example I'm using for high tunnels. And then there's a square foot payment that says, okay, the bigger the high tunnel, the more it's going to cost, obviously. So it's a kind of a two-part payment rate this year. And those are regionally set based on data that's been collected locally, and typically at a higher level. Like planners are not usually involved in any way in setting those payment rates. So generally for some practices, especially things that are like construction related, like the price of steel, the price of concrete, those are skyrocketing, and our payment rates are not keeping up with that inflation. But other times, for example, like if the cost of seed changes, like maybe it's a little bit more on par. For example, our cover crop rates do generally go up a little bit every year. For high tunnels, I haven't really, it seems pretty on par. It did go up a little bit, especially with this new way that they're calculating it. But it's out of our hands and unknown until about November or December every year is when we get the new fiscal year payment rates.
I'd like to add on to that, is remembering that we are different than grants. We are more of a cost share program. So where our payment rates are never supposed to be 100% of all of your money that you had to put out, and you do have to put out your capital first. and complete the practice to our standards, and then we can issue payment. So it's not like, is with, Jenny was offering those great grants. Some of them have matched, some of them don't. But you can receive the funds before you start your project. That's not the case with us. You have to have your own funding first.
Thank you.
And then just building off of that, they kind of mentioned the funding pools. And so there's different priorities in each of those pools. And there is a process across the whole state. It's called locally led. And the districts actually get to help steer some of the NRCS funds towards the priorities that the community identifies. And so that's like pretty much an ongoing process throughout the year. So if you have things that you really want funded because you're invested in them, come talk to us and we can maybe tuck that into our pool for next year to set aside some money specifically for that. And then you're just competing against other Franklin County farms as opposed to statewide pools.
Yes.
So
Good plug.
Good to know.
Good
Yeah,
plug.
absolutely.
yeah.
And I believe each county or section of the state has their own funding pools. So if you're not in Franklin County, but you're in Grand Isle County.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, it is this, it's a statewide process that Lauren was talking about where, it's usually by county. It could also be by maybe watershed or something else that it's a smaller defined area. And there are several efforts like that around the state for sure. Did you have a question?
Yeah, so in terms of, so this is kind of, and I know it's in flux right now, so Act 250. Like if you were gonna be getting technical assistance for some sort of new build, whether it was, I guess, like a high tunnel type thing. A new high tunnel, but like had an existing site where there was maybe one that needed help or whatever. How does Act 250 potentially play into that? If you're, so I'm on a property that we have a wedding venue. So we've been cleared by Act 250. Then who knows if they actually should have stepped their foot in there, but what's the relationship there? Cause it's been murky in the past for us. So I'm just wondering, is there help to guide through or communicate with the other agencies that might try to step in assistance? That would be a great position. Yeah.
So everyone online, the question was about Act 250 and how it might impact NRCS, especially infrastructure projects that we might assist with. And I don't believe there is a correlation. We don't help you change a land use.
Yeah.
We don't help you clear a forest and start a field. We do have restrictions with, say, cultural resources or wetlands.
Yeah.
Other federal acts and policy that we have to follow, but I'm not aware of any Act 250 issues. Because if you're in, say, the third tier where if you got to keep it natural, then we're only helping you keep it as the land base already is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure a high tunnel is considered a permanent structure. It shouldn't be.
It's not.
It shouldn't be.
That's why there's the
Right.
difference between greenhouse and high tunnel.
Right, yes. So I have personally not ever had to assist anybody with any sort of Act 250 paperwork or permitting or anything like that. I don't think it really comes into play very often.
Okay.
Well, I think that the accessory on-farm businesses, such as a wedding venue, in a lot of municipalities have triggered
Yes.
the Act 250. And
Right.
so from some of the stories
Because it's
that I'm hearing, they're coming in and they're placing restrictions. So before Act 250, anybody who's agriculture, you're not supposed to.
Story.
You shouldn't have even needed
Yeah.
to go and ask the municipality for permission to do any type of agricultural structure. And with all of the changes, that's what's changing. So I think that you're absolutely right. It is a temporary structure, one. Two, it falls underneath agriculture, but I think in the climate that we're facing right now, that's not what a lot of people are running into. So I think what you're asking for is a resource or somebody that can help you navigate these situations, and I don't feel like there's any one particular group right now that can really, or is really helping farmers that are finding themselves in that position.
You did say there was one near before, right?
Yes,
So it was, I don't know if they grandfather that spot.
it should be, because it was there. Yes, I'm just
That
curious.
seems like a
Yeah.
great question to reach out for the farm viability
Yeah,
program,
yeah.
though.
Okay.
Great.
Mhm.
That or, we could probably ask some hypothetical questions, to agency of ag.
We get really good at
We
the
get,
calling regulators and saying, so theoretically.
yes,
I'm
yes.
really-
Theoretically,
So.
yes. And the folks at Agency of Ag, like, they're really great people. They want to help you.
Yeah.
And so the hypothetical questions, can usually get you the answer that you need.
Yeah, 'cause I like, without going down,
A little rabbit hole.
yeah, you know, I like the site where we have a decent site with a high tunnel. It needs improvements, but in terms of looking to potentially expand parts of our growing side of the business, a different location might be needed. And this is after the high tunnel was up, after a barn was there and an Act 250 showed up. There was potential concern with like digging anything that wasn't for ag use. And I know a high tunnel technically is ag use, but it was like, you know, it was just kind of like us really trying to plead our case that this is this is still agriculture. This is like, so I just was curious if other people had kind of run into that and was like, yes, this is, yeah. But the hypothetical questions, yeah, it's good to know.
So I think even like on my farm, so I did an FSA loan and it used to be, let's say I have pasture area and I want to open something up to create another plot to put something in.
Yeah.
There's a whole process that I need to go through now. I can't just hook up my plow and my tractor and just head on out there and decide I'm gonna do like a big sunflower plot. I have to actually talk to FSA and I have to go through an entire process. So, things have absolutely
Yeah.
changed with.
And I'm sorry, is that because you're receiving funds from FSA or?
My understanding is that I just can't disturb,
Yeah,
even if it's pasture, even if my grandfather had corn in there, that
Yeah.
I can't open up a new plot. I can't plow it and just do what I want with it. And it's partly because they are leaned on the property, but I think that there's like a second component there that I don't know fully. I just know that there are some regulations around opening up new areas. So for you, you're gonna be opening up a new site to do a high tunnel. I agree with you that it's still agriculture. I just think that there are some further steps that you have to go through now.
Yeah.
Even aside, even if you're not connected with like FSA, I think there's some other restrictions there.
Okay.
But I'm not sure exactly why.
yeah.
You might be referring to maybe the Food Security Act where there was a law passed in 1985 that FSA and NRCS need to we're in charge of with the compliance for it. There's two sides of it. One is highly erodible land and the other side is wetland compliance. And back in the 80s, there was a lot of wetland converted to cropland, and it was really marginal and it was not good cropland. And the law was passed to sort of strongly deter folks from doing that. Is keep your cropland on the good fertile land and not try to crop wetlands. But we are still having to run every participant with USDA has to, if they're clearing land to make it croppable, and generally it's commodity crops, but it could, I'm not quite sure how flowers might fall into that, but generally if land is being cleared, like stumped, if you are potentially ditching or leveling or changing any hydrology or anything, we need to come do a wetland determination to make sure that you're not converting a wetland. So that is one of the pieces of technical work that we do, that is required if you're going to be a program participant with us. For many reasons, I mean, nobody really wants a high tunnel accidentally in a wetland. It's just gonna present problems for the producer. It's environmentally not a good idea. So that is another aspect of sort of the background work that gets done during the conservation planning process. I wonder if that's what you're coming up against with
Not being able to
not
plow
being
it.
able to plow up a new field.
I just thought like this year, if I just wanted to plow up one of my pasture areas to put sunflowers in my mind, if I'm doing it with my rototiller, I'm not really going down that deep. I should be able to do
Yeah,
it,
no,
but
you
I
should.
just know as a condition of my loan
Mm-hmm.
that I was told that I could not do that. But maybe it sounds like you should hook up with one of these people and then just have them come out and do like, check your area over
Yeah,
so
you
that
should
they
just
say that you're not in there, and you'll be a step ahead to put one in there in the future.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great.
We are in Amy and I had a conversation yesterday about Act 181, which is working to do something with Act 250. And we're working to schedule another workshop kind of like this, probably in May or June, with the folks who are making those maps to explain a bit more about how that's going to impact Franklin County, and kind of tier 3 lands and where those are going to fall. So stay tuned. I don't have a date yet, but his name is Alex Weinhagen, will be coming and talking about that, and so we can get that information out to you folks too.
Yeah, very proactive.
Yeah.
I'm sure that people right now that it's affecting are having meltdowns. I was having a meltdown yesterday.
It was a good phone call though. I learned a lot. I learned a lot about Act 2021 yesterday. So.
Was there someone online with a hand up?
I think it was like an applauding hand.
Yeah, I
Okay.
did see an applauding hand. For folks online, trying very hard not to ignore you. If you do have a question, a comment, feel free to raise your hand, put something in the chat.
I have a quick question to Jenny.
Yeah.
Jenny, are you still there?
I'm still here.
We heard from NRCS that all of the payments are taxable income. Is that the same for state grants?
This is a great question, and I literally just had a conversation with my colleagues yesterday about how I am not supposed to provide tax advice to anyone because I had been telling folks things, and our legal counsel has advised me to advise people to ask their tax consultants. So unfortunately, I don't have a great answer for that, but and the reason we don't provide a direct answer is because we have a lot of different funding sources, like federal, state, and some are reimbursement and some aren't. And so we don't have like a blanket statement for how all of our programs are perceived on taxes. So I apologize for deferring.
That's okay.
Or kind of like deflecting this question.
No, I want to piggyback off that too, because literally all we're allowed to say is it's taxable, and we are not allowed to give you advice on how to apply or how to write it off potentially or any of that. It's all between you and your tax advisor, because we are not tax professionals.
Fair enough.
Yeah, there's a hand. Oh my goodness.
Hi, it's Kristen. Can you hear me? Hi, I'm Kristen. I'm Moonlight Mountain Farm in Roxbury, Vermont, Washington County. I think that makes us the Winooski Conservation District. Maria, I was wondering about your application for the specialty crop block grant, and if that was going to extend to either including or inviting in farms outside of the Franklin County Conservation district?
Yes, absolutely. Great question. So details are still very much being finalized. Our goal is to have workshops and webinars be as accessible to folks across the state as possible. If you are interested in hosting a workshop on your farm and you are not in Franklin or Grand Isle, anywhere in the state, let me know. And we can work with you. We could potentially like put that in the application. So Kristen, we can touch base. In terms of direct technical assistance, again, this is not completely finalized. Unfortunately, we are limited to Franklin and Grand Isle counties for like directly working with you on a specific grant application, but we can refer you to your local conservation district. And
I would say Kara Winslow was on the call earlier. And she is one of the Winooski agricultural specialists. Doesn't look like she's on anymore.
Yeah.
But so she heard the same stuff that you heard today, and I'm sure we'd be more than happy to have a conversation, if nothing else.
Yes, absolutely. For any producer here, I can send out the list of conservation districts throughout the state and their contact information.
Okay, great. Yeah, one idea might be, if you all are fortunate to receive the funding, when there's going to be webinars, online workshops, if there's the opportunity for growers in those conservation districts, say, to like meet at their home conservation district office and participate, while virtually, but still together. I think, as probably everybody in the room knows, isolation is real. And so any opportunity to kind of just be able to connect and network with folks in your district and counties would be great. And I think probably really valuable, because things could come out of those conversations and connections that just don't happen when we're all on our own back 40 or 2, whatever it may be.
Yeah, absolutely. That is such a wonderful suggestion. And anyone who's a producer here, if you have an idea of what you want to learn more of,
fill out the survey after the event.
Fill out the survey after the event. My name and contact information is around, and definitely happy to have a conversation with you.
I'll keep going if nobody else wants to. Just, I wondered if any of the folks that we heard from today, I think I personally, with the many moving parts of managing a farm, it can be really challenging to like wade through all the different like funding opportunities and eligibilities and limitations. And so I wondered if there was any opportunities out there that specifically feel relevant or supportive to agritourism. I think flower farms, can, if set up correctly, really lend themselves to having people on the farm. Just it's a beautiful experience. It's a unique experience. And again, your farm really needs to be set up in a particular way to be inviting the public onto your farm and have it be safe and meaningful, and making sure that you're communicating all the right information out to anybody who may come onto your farm. So I was wondering if agritourism is something that's funded by any of the programs named today. And then, and I think it sounds like all of you are very willing to have conversations. If you were to call and say, hey, these are my business goals, my growth goals, based on what you have available, what do you see as being like the best link for the program, and funding options that you have? if there's another way that you suggest to be more efficient about matching yourself up to the funding opportunities out there, I'm all ears.
I can jump in with something about agritourism. The Agency of Agriculture doesn't have anything specifically, but the Vermont Community Loan Fund does offer an agritourism specific loan that is at below market rates. And they recently told me that that program has been undersubscribed. And so they have a pool of funds that they want to be loaning out at low interest rates. And I think one of the reasons it's been undersubscribed is because a lot of farms don't think of themselves as an agritourism farm. Some people don't even know what that means. It's a kind of like a wonky term. And so like they were telling me like that loan can be used to fund anything that's going to bring visitors to a farm. So that could just mean a farm stand. So if you want to build or improve upon a farm stand where you're selling flowers, that's agritourism as far as they're concerned. It doesn't have to be some like elaborate, farm stay with a beautiful dinner. Like it can be pretty simple. And so whatever like equipment or infrastructure or needs that you have to be able to either bring people to your farm or improve the experience when they're at the farm would qualify for that loan. So I know it's not a grant, which is what we all want, but it is a low interest loan that's specifically dedicated that, so likely to be funded.
Okay, great. Thank you for that resource.
I think I might share my screen.
You share that screen?
I'm trying to share. Oh my goodness. Okay, this is not gonna work very well, but no, I don't want to share my screen. Oh my goodness.
Please refresh the page.
Here we go. Okay, so in the ag guide, there is a funding matrix. And I'm going to be very slow about this. So, these are the very beginning pages of the Guide to Ag Producers in Vermont. And because there are so many categories, the actual matrix is a little bit more condensed. But in terms of the specialty crops and agritourism, there are a few industries in here. And then if you head over to the matrix, then there is this column over here with all of the grants and programs that can be applicable to agritourism, flower farming, any of the other specialty crops as well.
And then this was our first stab at the matrix, so there might be other programs that also apply that we didn't check the box for.
Yes.
But it's a good starting point. Obviously still talk to a human. But it's a good starting point just to, because it's too many programs.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. And so this was our first stab at, if you're opening up the ag guide and you have a very vague idea of what you're looking for, these first few pages can give you some pointers. But again, there are conservation districts all throughout the state. we're always happy to talk to you, and we can give you some ideas on what might best fit your business and what you're looking for at the moment, and some longer term goals. That's also like what NOFA and VHCD and some of the other organizations out there that do business planning can assist with.
Yeah, it's not sure.
Any other questions in the room, on Zoom?
Okay. Read all of this.
So I will be sending out the slides for today. I can send a digital copy of the ad guide. I can send over the loan through BCLF that Jenny mentioned. And again, yes, e-survey. Yes. Thank you all so much for coming. And have a great weekend.
And thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.